So yesterday we discussed the existing methodology, which is mainly Waterfall for SDLC. And we spoke about the pitfalls of that existing methodology and what led the group of 21 persons to meet up and come up with better solutions of developing software. Okay, and that led to Agile. All right, we also spoke about the different frameworks under Agile, of which Scrum, XP, Kanban, etc. Okay, and after that, we started defining and understanding the origin of Scrum. After spoken, says the Agile principles and the Agile manifesto. All right, any questions before we continue?
Hi.
Hello. Okay.
Is it possible to have yesterday PowerPoint, please?
What we're going to be doing, we just, if you're joining today, we're just going to continue. And at the end of this session on Friday, we're going to have all the videos converted and posted. And we're going to try to share the links. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we said yesterday that the Scrum methodology was developed in the early 90s by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland, respectively, leading the Scrum.org and the Scrum Alliance.org organizations. Okay, we define what the Scrum is specifically under the Agile framework. And we said that in Agile, as in Scrum, we do work in iteration. And we want to allow the business to have the flexibility to make changes at any time without incurring too much risk or expenses. Okay, and that also gives the team, the dev team, the confidence that they need to be able to successfully develop product increment and release it to the product owners. Okay. So this is one big comparison between the Waterfall and the Scrum models. Okay, so yesterday I was telling you about all the steps that are under the Waterfall methodology, and you know that with a product that is developed under Waterfall, you're trying to make sure you do the requirements analysis initially, and that you try to finish all up front before you move on to the next steps. Before you design, you code, you test, and finally you release. There is no other steps that you do if there's any change relative to what was committed initially, unless you go through what we call change of requirement, CRs, okay? And that process involves rebudgeting everything and reallocating resources, okay? So on the other hand, you have Scrum, where we're going to be doing those steps, but we're going to be doing them on small piece of the product. Okay, so you're going to be doing the design, the analysis, the coding, the test on small pieces of the product that we're going to be releasing or not. And we call them increment. We're going to see that later on as well. So initially, you have the first sprint, what we call sprint, which are usually on average 2 weeks. It can go from 1 week, 2 weeks to 4 weeks or a month. And during that period, you have all those steps that you reproduce, but you reproduce it on a piece of the product, or the features of the product that you're trying to develop. So for instance, you're trying to build a booking application, flight booking application. And maybe you want to design the application to have the customer to be able to sign up, create an account, pay online, and make reservations. On the Waterfall, what you would do is you will do the requirements analysis for all those features at the same time. And until you're done with the analysis for all the different features, You're not moving on to planning, designing, developing, testing. Okay, so and that's why it's usually in the waterfall model a lengthy step to do, because we want to make sure that everything is taken care of and there's nothing that is missed. Because if there's anything missed and there's a risk of change, what's going to happen? You need to go through a CR, a change of requirements, and what is coming out of it? More money that you need to pour into the project, and you probably need to extend the timelines as well. Whereas on the same software, you can have the first feature developed. So you can decide that you want to create the sign up feature or create an account feature. Once you're done with that, you're going to be doing the design, the coding, the testing, and you're going to be potentially releasing that in production. And if you want, and in that process, you don't necessarily have to release it. It depends on what the product owner is going to be deciding, if it's actually bring any value to release it in production. In this case, it's probably not going to give you much value to release it in production directly. But what you can do is have that created account feature developed. Once you're done with that, you can pour that code and release that code into a repository without having to send it in production. And there, everything can be tested. You can have a demo and show the product owner or the customer exactly what has been done. And at that moment, they can have any additional changes that they can make at that point without impacting anything else, because nothing else than that feature has been developed. So it gives the product owner the opportunity of seeing what has been done upfront on the sample of the product at a smaller level. Okay, and then when you're done with that and you get the sign up from the product owner, you can decide that, okay, we're going to have another increment. And you can see here that this little dot represents the first feature, the product that is with the basic account creation feature. Okay, that's the first iteration that we did here. So we took the big project with the 4 features, we split the project into 4 features and decided to start with designing and developing the first feature, which was the account creation feature. And once you're done with the design, the test, the development, analysis, and all that, you have a piece of project that is completed that we call a product increment. That's what you see represented here. Okay, let me try to, yeah, okay. So you have that little piece of product increment that is a working part of the product, a working version of the product with 1 feature at that moment, and it is releasable, meaning if we send it to production, it's going to work. Once you're done with that, you can go to the next iteration and take on the next feature. So let's say you want to have develop on your application, in addition to the feature that was created before and creating an account, you want to have the payment functionality or feature created. Then you're going to be, based on the initial feature that you created, implement the additional functionality. You're going to test code and test everything together. So meaning you're going to integrate those 2 features and make sure the codes are actually working properly together. That's integration testing. Okay, once you're done with that, you're also going to be releasing that or not, depending on what the product owner is thinking. If it's going to bring value to send it to production, then you're going to have the sign off from the product owner. So at that moment, you have 2 features. So the next sprint, which is this step, is going to yield another product increment that is bigger because it has 2 features. Okay, and you're going to be repeating that process for the 3rd feature. You're going to be coding the 3rd feature. You're going to be integrating that with the existing product increment that has 2 features, and it's going to give you the 3rd product increment. And you're doing that until you complete the whole project. So you can see that at any time you have a decision that you can make. You can do a demo here and decide whether or not to move forward with the feature, or if there's any change, because the market has been changing as well, and you need to adapt to the market changes, right? So at this level, when you make the decision, to either continue the development to the next iteration. You can still make some changes if you need to the next sprint, and take care of that before going any further. Okay, and that's the flexibility of Scrum. That's why you do development in iteration, because it limits the risks. Like I said, it can be a market change, a technology change, where you start using a technology, maybe you develop in Java, or maybe you develop on your database, your own infrastructure, and then tomorrow on the next sprint, you realize that the market is moving to the cloud, right? So you don't want to have everything completed up front, otherwise you will need to restart everything over or migrate it to the cloud at once, and you might have some compatibility issues. So to be able to react and adapt easily to market changes or technology changes, is best to use the Scrum methodology, and you can see it by the process I just explained. Let me stop for a second and ask if there's any question. Okay. All right, so who uses Scrum? I'm going to show you in a few seconds the state of Scrum as of this last year, but a bunch of companies, especially the tech companies, have been in the forefront of the Scrum methodology, right? Those are people who started adopting those practices 15 years ago or more, right? And you can see that those are all big companies. So today, more people, even small companies, small businesses, are recognizing the benefits of Scrum, and they move toward that methodology as well. Okay, so you have the big names: Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, EA, Lockheed Martin, and also in the banking industry, Capital One, Oracle, Salesforce, and all the others. In the automobile industry, Toyota. So any part of each industry is able to use Scrum. So it's not only something that is developed for developing or creating or building application or software, or something that can work in any industries. And that's what I'm trying to show you here. Okay. So this is the state of the Agile as of 2020. Okay, you can see that 58% of the people who use Agile are actually doing Scrum. Okay, so that's the most used methodology on the Agile as of today, right? And then you have 8% the hybrid XP, which is extreme programming, and Scrum. But Scrum is really, really at the forefront of the development. You also have the Scrum Band, which is a Scrum and Kanban methodology mixed together. Okay. And what is the level at which many companies are at today, right? We see only 18% of all the teams in the companies that were surveyed have fully adopted and are implementing Scrum or Agile, right? Now, one thing that you need to realize is that there's going to be a lot of demand in the coming months and years for Scrum, especially with the shift that happened during the pandemic, right? You do have a lot of people working now from home, and to be efficient in what they're doing, they need to adopt Agile or Scrum in general, right? Anybody who did not at least put its feet at the door to try to have an Agile or Scrum transformation is lagging behind, is having some productivity issues now that people are working from home. Because what Agile is allowing you, or Scrum is allowing you to do when you have people working from home, and we're going to see that in the different processes. I'm going to explain to you how we adapt that in this environment and why it is really important. And those companies who have been using that actually seen an increase in productivity, right? With the meetings, everybody's kept in the loop. You have check-ins meetings that we call daily stand-ups, for example. You have planning, sprint plannings. You have retrospective meetings, etc., etc. So just to show you on this slide that there's a huge demand coming for Scrum, a lot more jobs coming for Scrum. And you see that almost everyone who is using Agile So the majority, so almost 60% is going with Scrum. And you can also see that the industry is not mature yet. Only 18%, so less than 20% of the companies are really ready and are using fully Scrum or Agile in general, right? So what you want to realize then is the 44% that have the half of their teams using Agile and 33% that have more than half of their teams using Agile want to move to this sector. They want to move to the 80% of the people who are actually fully using Agile. So to do that, they need skillful folks. They need people who understand the framework and who can implement it. Okay. So going further into this, we're going to speak a little bit about the Scrum theories, the principles, the values, etc., etc. And I was explaining to you yesterday that Scrum is based on two main theories. All right, you have the first, which is the empiricism, iterations and increments. So you want to make sure that every time you undertaking a project, you want to make sure that you know a little bit of what's going on, or if you don't know, that you take the least risks possible. That's why you start with a small increment. That's what you break the projects down into small pieces, and you start working them one by one, iterations by iteration, and by increment. Okay, so that's what we call empiricism, is learning by doing and allowing you to step back and reduce your risk till you know more. That's empiricism. Okay. Now, the Scrum consists also into three main principles. The first one is the transparency. Okay. And with transparency within the dev teams, you do see that people feel that they're valuable and they feel accountable. So all the information that is shared in the team is reaching out everyone, because we're having constant face-to-face, either face-to-face interactions or meetings where we are on the same page, or we are able to discuss things and make sure that we align on the same objectives. That's transparency. No information is withheld with anyone. There's no management controlling the information or withholding the information. There's transparency into what we think we want to do, and we all know the same thing at the same time, anytime. Okay. There's also the inspection, which is the second principle. We make sure that after each iteration, so every sprint, we do an inspection. Okay, we're going to see a little more about that when we talk about the sprint review. That's where you do the demo. So after you're doing an increment, at the end, you want to make sure that it is inspected, right? That you review it, you inspect it, you do a demo. And when you do the demo, it gives the opportunity to the product owner or any other stakeholder that has interest into that product to make changes, to give feedback, and to better the product before going further, okay, without too much risk. The third principle is the adaptation. Changes. That costs money on the waterfall. So the more we further into the project on the waterfall, the more risks there is, and the more money potentially we're going to have to spend if we try to make changes at that time. But with Scrum, you can easily adapt because you take over small pieces of work at the time, and as you learn more, you can do better. And on your way to the completing the whole product, you already know what you're doing. You have more information, and you can make better decisions. Okay, so it's okay to change if the market changes, if the technology changes, if the business vision changes, etc., etc. Okay. Questions? Okay. All right. So moving on to the values. There are five main values into Scrum. The first one is the commitment, right? The Scrum team wants to commit to what they're responsible for achieving. They want to decide what they want to work on, how they want to work on it, and commit to it. There is no micromanagement into Scrum. People are responsible for the work that they pick up, and they are held accountable for that. So in other words, the dev team or the development team is empowered to do its work and decide how to do it, right? So we in Scrum, we do make sure that we put the commitment at the forefront of anything that we're doing, and the dev team is abiding by that. The focus. The Scrum team is making sure that everything that they're doing during the sprint is done toward advancing the product increment and having the best quality possible of that increment. So that's why your role as a Scrum Master is to make sure that you are removing impediments for your team. That's one of the most important roles of the Scrum Master. You want to make sure that everything that your development team is doing is to advance the product increment that they're working on for the sprint. Okay, so the team needs to focus on whatever they committed to and make sure that every single things that they're doing is to move it forward and deliver the best product increment possible. Openness. That's a little bit related to transparency. We said it. We want to make sure that all the dev team, the Scrum team, meaning the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the dev team, that's what makes the Scrum team. And we're going to come to that when we talk about the core roles in Scrum. So we want to make sure that the whole Scrum team is open to talk, to discuss anything, to discuss impediment. That's what happened in the daily stand-up. Is there any impediment that is holding us from moving forward? Is there anything that we need from each other? Is there anybody who needs help? Is there anybody who has a problem with something? Is there anybody who is not feeling respected? Is there anybody who is lacking the tools he or she needs to do his or her job? Openness. Respect. We want to trust and respect every single member in the Scrum team. We want to trust and respect that every single team member has the skill and the competency to do his or her job and do it well. So everybody's working independently. There is no lead in the Scrum team. There's no manager in the Scrum team. Everyone is committed and is focusing on the work he decided to pick up during the sprint. There's no assignment of tasks by any leads or any manager in Scrum. There's no assignment. The team is the sole responsible of choosing what they want to work on, and every team member on the dev team is volunteering basically on the task that they want to accomplish to deliver that product increment. And courage. The Scrum team have the courage to do the right thing. So if something is not right, they need to speak up. They need to be open. They need to be transparent and to solve the problem so that it betters the way they deliver the product increment. They need the courage to speak up. I've seen some configurations where team members have different mentality, right? And some people are not speaking. I mean, that's normal. Some people are outspoken more than others. Some people would come in a meeting and not really say anything, right? But in the daily stand-up, we're going to see that also a couple of slides down. In the daily stand-up, everyone is speaking. So you basically kind of forced to say something, to speak up every day, you know? So it allows people to know what you think and what is going on. That's also the beauty of it. So all the mix of characters that you have in the Scrum team is actually blending at some point together so well, because you do have the possibility of everyone speaking and speaking daily. Okay. Questions?
I do have one. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
So, looking at the openness, one thing that you're mentioning is that there's no leads and
I think you have your what's your microphone? Put your microphone a little close to your mouth, I think, Jorgen.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
sorry
Yeah,
about that.
no problem.
So, my question is more geared toward the team composition. So, you saying looking at this value, commitment and openness,
Mhm.
and especially commitment. When a team commit or a team member commit and pick up a specific task,
Yeah.
it brings a specific question to my mind. How is competence managed among a Scrum team?
Okay, so we're gonna see that when we talk about the core. That's a good question. I like that. So in the Scrum team, you do have a product owner, and again we're gonna come back on that. If you don't get the full understanding now, we're gonna come to it in detail, and you're gonna get it. But in the Scrum team, just to give you a preliminary answer, in the Scrum team you have the product owner, you have the Scrum Master, and you have the development team that we usually refer to as the team, right? And under the development team, one of the main characteristics of the development team is that it is a cross-functional team and self-organizing team. So by cross-functional, that means that every single person under the team has some skills to be able to independently produce the product increment after a sprint. It means that you're going to have a blend of everything you need to deliver a piece of increment. Like you're going to have developers who are working on back end stuff, front end, people who can test, people who know Java, people who know Oracle. Everything that you need to build a feature is actually what every single person in the team should have. And as a group, you should be independent. You shouldn't be relying on anybody out of the team to help you delivering the product increment, right? So if you need, for example, provide or develop an application, booking application, like I said before, that feature of creating an account is one responsibility for a sprint that the development team needs to be able to take on by itself. So you're going to have everyone on the team being able to do something that's going to contribute at the end to delivering that feature. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Any other question? All right. You guys need to speak up. Is there anyone here on the call that has already been certified?
Yes, me.
Okay. So we have a what did you do? CSM or PSM? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, so I'm Christelle and I've done the PSM 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. So I think you're gonna be assisting me a little more on that. So I'm probably gonna be asking you more questions.
Yes, I really, to assist you. That's going to help me. Yeah, I like to do that.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Yeah, you guys gonna have to be a little more talkative because assume that if we go in this fast, then you
I
know
have a
what we're
question.
talking about. Let's
I
see.
have a question.
Yeah,
Hi, this is Helen. If you've already taken the CSM or PSM, why take the class again?
if you already did what?
If you already took the certification,
Yeah.
why take this class again?
If you want to have learn a little more, maybe you haven't worked on the as a Scrum Master before, right? You need to understand the framework a little better because there's a difference between taking the exam and having the knowledge of that comes with the practice. Okay. So if you have questions that is related to your job, we can discuss that as well because a lot of folks might have already a certification, but that's something that is pretty theoretical, right? So you might not be able to sometime on the job solve certain issues, right? Or direct and coach your team a certain way because you haven't practiced that enough to see what works and what doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you have the PSM as well?
No. No.
All right. I
I,
think one.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I've seen
ahead.
that there is a new release for the Scrum 2020.
Yes, November 2020.
Yeah, I just want to know if you're going to highlight what are like the main differences between what was there before and what is there now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like that. So the Scrum guide that has been released in 2020 is actually, and that's the good news, looks much simpler than the 2017 version. What I mean by that, if you already went through those two documents and trying to have some comparison, you're going to realize that the Scrum Guide 2020 has only 13 pages. The Scrum Guide 2017, the release of 2017, has 19 pages. That's a 6-page difference. And the content is actually simplified under the Scrum 2020 guide, the Scrum Guide 2020, I should say. Okay, what I suggest, if you're going to be taking the certification, and that's what I really base this course and my teachings on, is the 2017, because it has much more details in terms of the Scrum framework that than the Scrum Guide 2020. The definitions are explained better, longer. You have more explanation, more information in there. But the Scrum 2020, the Scrum Guide 2020 is actually simplified. It's kind of a summary, I should say. It's more compact. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. When we get to the end, maybe of this class, I'm going to show you, if we speak about, for those who want to be doing the PSM certification, PSM1, I'm going to show you the differences between the two Scrum guides. And moving forward, if you're going to be doing the remaining trainings with us, then we're definitely going to show you the 800 questions and what you might expect. But the questions are the tricky questions that they ask you. You will find the answers more into the 2017 guide because you have more information into it, and they tend to rely on that guide to test you most of the time. Okay, so that's why, once again, I'm basing this course more on the information from the 2017 guide. Okay. Any other question? All right. So we're gonna break for 10 minutes, and we should join back. What time is it? Let me see. We should join back at 7:18 Eastern time. So 7:18 p.m. Eastern time, we should join back. Okay. All right. I'll talk to you in a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.